They say the loudest man in the room holds the power, but history tells a different story. The true masters of influence were never the ones shouting, but the ones who sat in silence, watching, calculating, unshaken. Nonchalance is not weakness. It's a weapon sharper than rage, a stillness so controlled it forces others to unravel themselves. What if I told you that the greatest victories in psychology, war, and power were won not by noise, but by the art of stillness? Think about it. Every time you reacted out of anger, panic, or desperation, did it give you power, or did it give it away? The world isn't ruled by the emotional, but by those who can remain still when everyone else trembles. Nonchalance bends the rules of psychology itself. It creates doubt, draws respect, and flips pressure back onto the one applying it. Most people are slaves to their impulses, but the rare few who can master the art of stillness become untouchable. The question is, will you remain ordinary, or will you learn the silent weapon no one sees coming? If you're ready to uncover the hidden laws of power that most people will never understand, stay with me until the end. What you're about to hear will change how you move, how you speak, and how others see you forever. This is curiosity to wisdom, and today I'll reveal why nonchalance isn't just calmness, but the purest form of dominance. Most people confuse stillness with laziness, but they are not the same. Laziness is weakness. It leaks insecurity and signals surrender before the battle even begins. Stillness, when weaponized, is the exact opposite. It is restraint sharpened into a blade, patience used like a shield, and silence deployed as psychological warfare. Imagine a room where everyone is talking, competing for attention, spilling their emotions into the air. Then there's you, calm, unreadable, unmoved. The silence you hold doesn't make you smaller. It makes you larger because no one can measure you. Nonchalance unsettles people because it denies them what they crave most: certainty. Humans hate uncertainty. It gnaws at their nerves, corrodes their confidence, forces them into missteps. And so when you remain calm where others expect panic, when you stay indifferent where others expect reaction, you create a vacuum of control. People fill it with assumptions, with fear, with their own projections. And while they're busy unraveling themselves, you remain steady. This is the essence of psychological armor. Not reacting, but letting others reveal their weaknesses first. Nonchalance makes you unreadable, and what cannot be read cannot be controlled. The one who appears to care the least in the moment often holds the most power in the long run. The brilliance of nonchalance is not only in what it does for you, but in how it transforms the battlefield of perception for everyone around you. Your calmness becomes a mirror, reflecting back the insecurity of others. When you refuse to bite at provocation, you create uncertainty. They don't know if you're stronger, weaker, or simply indifferent. That uncertainty breeds respect, because people instinctively respect what they cannot fully understand. For manipulators, your stillness is poison. They thrive on predictable reactions: anger, defense, justification. But when you give them nothing, they flounder, frustrated, disoriented, unable to grip the handle of your psychology. Mystery begins to form around you, not by design, but by consequence. Others lean in closer, trying to decipher what you're thinking, and the more they try, the more control you gain. Nonchalance even flips pressure into leverage. In negotiations, silence makes others talk too much. In relationships, distance magnifies your value. In hierarchies, calm detachment makes you appear above the fray, someone operating from a higher ground. This subtle reordering of perception places you in the center without you ever asking to be. Power does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes the whisper is louder than any roar. Nonchalance is not a gift you are born with. It is something hammered into existence through deliberate training, sharpened through countless trials where impulse must be killed and replaced with discipline. Anyone can fake calmness for a few minutes, but pretenders eventually shatter the moment real pressure arrives. Their voice cracks, Their hands tremble, their emotions leak through like water breaking a fragile dam. True nonchalance, the kind that unsettles others and commands respect, is forged through rigorous conditioning of mind and body until your responses no longer belong to the moment, but to your will. The first step is mastering the art of delayed reaction. When provoked, questioned, or offered something, resist the urge to reply immediately. The world pushes you to move on its time. Hesitation, urgency, and anxiety all serve as traps. By waiting even briefly, you reclaim ownership of the moment. People grow restless in silence. They begin to doubt, to reveal themselves, to betray their impatience. This simple pause shifts the balance of control from them to you. The second discipline is emotional opacity. Humans are trained to read faces. Tiny twitches, eye movements, or changes in breath become signals. If you allow these to escape, you hand your adversary a weapon sharper than any blade. Your training must harden you to the point where no micro-expression betrays what you feel inside. This does not mean emptiness, it means mastery, the ability to feel without revealing. Third, learn restraint in speech. Every word you utter gives away a piece of your mind, a fragment of your plan. Silence, on the other hand, becomes a mirror that reflects people back at themselves. They will search for meaning in your quietness, assume depth, and often reveal more than they intended. Silence plants uncertainty in others, while clarity plants vulnerability in you. Fourth, regulate your presence. Do not be everywhere. Do not answer everything. What appears too often loses weight. Scarcity makes presence valuable. People crave what they cannot easily have, and absence forces them to recognize your importance. Finally, embrace loss without collapse. When defeat touches you but leaves no visible scar, others begin to fear your resilience. If this did not break you, what could? That question terrifies more than any threat. Above all, remember, nonchalance is not indifference. It is selective care. Pretending not to care hollows a man, but choosing what to care for and discarding the rest creates an immovable force. True nonchalance is not an act. It is power refined. Once the shield of nonchalance has been forged through discipline, it must not remain a passive defense. The next evolution is transformation, turning calmness itself into a weapon that pierces deeper than force. Stillness, when carried not as apathy but as deliberate presence, destabilizes the ground beneath others. It unsettles because it denies the usual patterns people depend on to predict, manipulate, and control. A man who remains composed when provoked becomes unreadable, and unreadable people are dangerous because their intentions cannot be mapped or countered. In politics, this principle is lethal. A calm opponent terrifies more than an angry one. Anger can be measured, exploited, redirected. Calm, however, is opaque. Strategies crumble because unpredictability cannot be plotted against. A rival who refuses to react leaves others scrambling, second-guessing every move, wondering whether they are looking at indifference or concealed ambition. In negotiation, silence functions as invisible pressure. Humans are uncomfortable with gaps. They rush to fill them, and in doing so, they often reveal weakness or overextend themselves. By speaking less, you force the other side to speak more, often giving away concessions simply to escape the discomfort. Silence, in the right hands, extracts more than words ever could. In war, restraint is the ultimate disguise. An army that does not flinch, a leader who does not reveal urgency, forces the enemy into paranoia. Every delay becomes suspicious. Every pause feels like the setup for a trap. Then, when the decisive strike comes, it carries the weight of surprise, amplified by the mask of calmness. The demeanor of serenity hides ambition until it is too late to resist, and the victory feels inevitable because the enemy has already been psychologically conquered. Even in personal relationships, this dynamic shifts power. the RBR. Ability to hold presence without begging for validation reverses the chase. Attention flows toward you naturally as gravity pulls objects into orbit. What once required effort now becomes effortless attraction. You no longer run after approval. You generate the pull that makes others seek it. The most devastating movement, therefore, is sometimes no movement at all. Nonchalance weaponized keeps others trapped in uncertainty. Are you detached, or are you plotting? Are you weak, or waiting? This unresolved tension corrodes their confidence while solidifying yours. Stillness is not emptiness, it is preparation, and when released at the exact moment, it cuts sharper than any visible blade. But every weapon, no matter how sharp, carries the risk of turning against its wielder. Nonchalance is no exception. If mishandled, it does not elevate, it imprisons. Some fall into the trap of mistaking paralysis for patience, believing that their hesitation is calculated strategy, when in reality it is simply fear dressed as restraint. In moments that demand decisive action, they freeze, waiting for the perfect opportunity that never arrives. Power slips through their hands not because they were defeated, but because they never truly moved. Others drift into the opposite danger, confusing nonchalance with indifference. They convince themselves that caring is weakness, that involvement will compromise their control. But in doing so, they begin to neglect the very opportunities, alliances, and relationships that could have propelled them forward. What began as selective detachment decays into apathy, and apathy is the slow death of ambition. Detachment, when misapplied, also creates invisible enemies. Those around you may feel dismissed, overlooked, or unvalued. In personal relationships especially, overuse corrodes intimacy. What was once strength becomes distance, and distance becomes alienation. The subtle signal you send, that nothing affects you, can be inspiring when measured, but corrosive when constant. People crave acknowledgement, and when none is given, they wither or turn against you. The greatest danger, however, lies within. If you wear the mask of indifference too long, you risk confusing it with your true self. What began as armor hardens into identity. You forget what you actually care about, what drives you, what sparks your fire. Nonchalance must never consume the essence of who you are. It is a tool, a tactic, a chosen weapon. The moment it defines you, you become trapped in your own creation, locked in a cage of your own making. This is the warning. Nonchalance is powerful only when you wield it consciously. It must remain strategy, not destiny. Use it with precision, or it will use you. And if you've reached this point, you already sense that this knowledge is not surface level. It's transformative. It rewires how you move through power, through relationships, through life itself. So before we step into the deeper, more ruthless laws of stillness and control, pause here. Subscribe to Curiosity to Wisdom, because what follows will not simply separate the strong from the weak, but those who toy with power from those who master it completely. When the stakes escalate, whether in war rooms, boardrooms, or interrogations, the atmosphere thickens with urgency. Tension magnifies every glance, every breath, every movement. In these crucibles, the individual who maintains mastery over his internal state inevitably gains mastery over the external environment. Control of oneself becomes control of the room. In crisis, panic is contagious. It jumps from one person to another, like sparks igniting dry grass. But calm, true calm, spreads differently. It does not inflame. It chills. It moves through the air like ice, slowing the frenzy, suffocating the fire of hysteria, and forcing others to match its stillness. A leader who exudes composure while others unravel doesn't need to demand authority. It is given to him freely. People instinctively search for stability in chaos, and when they see one figure untouched by the storm, they cling to him. That reliance doesn't just grant temporary influence, it cements enduring power. This is the psychology behind interrogation techniques. The goal is always to break the emotional shield. The moment you react, whether through anger, fear, or desperation, you hand over leverage. But if you hold steady, if you remain unshaken, the interrogator drowns in his own mounting frustration. Every failed attempt to draw a reaction only amplifies your dominance. In finance, the same dynamic reigns. Markets live and die by emotion, fear driving crashes, greed driving bubbles, frenzy dictating short-term swings. The nonchalant investor does not chase the herd, nor does he panic at its stampede. He waits, unhurried, watching as emotion distorts reality. Then, with surgical timing, he strikes, buying when fear has gutted prices, selling when greed has inflated them beyond reason. His calmness is his edge, and his detachment becomes profit. In personal relationships, the principle plays out just as powerfully. Jealousy and insecurity thrive on visible reactions. When you flinch, argue, or beg, you feed the fire. But when you remain still, unbothered, the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, you are not the one chasing validation. You are the axis around which others revolve. High-stakes environments magnify human weakness, exposing those ruled by impulse. Nonchalance, by contrast, elevates you beyond human frailty, making you appear untouchable, even superhuman. It whispers silently that you see further than others, that you know something they do not. And so people surrender power, not because you demanded it, but because they assume you already possess it. Nonchalance, when trained deeply enough, transcends isolated actions. It begins to crystallize into aura. It is no longer about individual choices or calculated pauses. It becomes the energy that surrounds you, shaping perception before a word is spoken. Aura is silent dominance, the invisible force that makes people adjust their tone, their posture, even their thinking the moment you enter a room. You don't need to announce yourself. You don't need to prove anything. The way you move, deliberate, unhurried, unconcerned with pace, becomes its own proclamation of strength. Those who rush reveal anxiety. Those who hesitate reveal doubt. But the one who advances with calm inevitability makes every step feel like destiny itself. This aura is built not only in motion, but in silence. The pauses between your words speak louder than the words themselves. Unblinking eye contact, not aggressive but steady, denies others the comfort of rushing you. Every second of your presence communicates, I cannot be shaken. I cannot be moved by your urgency, your need, your pressure. Aura is not arrogance. It is gravity. It pulls attention, obedience, and even admiration without direct request. When you embody this level of nonchalance, people feel it immediately. They sense that rejection leaves you untouched, that betrayal cannot dismantle you, that you live outside the fragile cycles that control others. This creates magnetism of a different order, not the loud magnetism of charm, but the quiet inevitability of force. People come closer, not because you chase them, but because you deny them carelessly. And denial, when calm, becomes more intoxicating than pursuit. Like a star in space, you do not need to move toward anyone. Gravity does the work for you. They orbit your calm, circling with curiosity, projecting their own desires, fears, and questions onto your silence. You become a mirror in wool. Hitch others see themselves more than they see you. This dynamic gives you leverage without effort. They invest meaning in you that you never had to supply. And here lies the final transformation. Nonchalance ceases to be just a tactic or strategy. It becomes atmosphere. You radiate importance because you exist in a state beyond reaction. Power, once performed, feels fragile. But power that simply is, that breathes, moves, and radiates effortlessly, becomes unshakable. Nonchalance, at its highest level, is not what you do. it is what you are. Here lies the final transformation, the crossing into a state most never reach, the untouchable. This is not a mask you wear or a trick you practice. It is a fundamental shift in how you interact with the world, when rejection no longer wounds you, when betrayal no longer shocks you, when fear no longer dictates your movements. You rise above the games that ensnare almost everyone else. The opinions of others cease to hold power because you no longer hand them the tools to shape your state. No insult can pierce you, no flattery can seduce you, no pressure can bend you. What emerges is not arrogance, but liberation. This is freedom in its purest form, not the shallow freedom to do anything you want, but the deeper freedom from being broken by what others do. It is the emancipation of your mind and emotions from external control. Most people do not realize how chained they are until they encounter someone who has broken those chains. They are baited by praise, provoked by insult, enslaved by their hunger for validation. They spend their lives reacting, bending, adjusting to the moods and judgments of others, never realizing how much of their existence is dictated by forces outside themselves. When you internalize nonchalance fully, manipulation dissolves at its root. You cannot be hooked by neediness. You cannot be cornered by provocation. You cannot be bribed with approval. This does not strip you of humanity. It restores sovereignty. You feel emotions, but you no longer bleed them out for others to exploit. You care, but selectively, on your terms, not because someone pushed the right button. This state terrifies and fascinates in equal measure. To those trapped in the cycle of reaction, your calm feels alien, even supernatural. They cannot understand how you remain steady in storms that would break them. Some envy it, others fear it, but all recognize its gravity. What He cannot control, they cannot ignore. Here, stillness becomes more than a defense. It becomes strength. Calm hardens into control. Silence evolves into deliberate strategy. And in that transformation, you no longer play the endless game of manipulation. You stand outside it, sovereign, untouchable. This is the climax, the unveiling of the deepest truth. Nonchalance is not just a clever tactic, not merely a shield to endure the storms of life, but the ultimate law of power itself. Why? Because it renders you ungovernable. The world thrives on pulling strings: desire, fear, impatience, validation. Whoever controls those levers controls the person attached to them. But when those strings no longer attach to you, when you cut every invisible tether, you cease being a pawn in anyone else's game. The one who does not chase cannot be baited. The one who does not rush cannot be cornered. The one who does not beg cannot be denied. Nonchalance transforms dependence into sovereignty. Stillness, properly understood, is not absence. It is command. It does not mean doing nothing. It means refusing to be moved until you choose. Stillness is strategic waiting, a refusal to reveal your hand until the field has fully revealed itself to you. Others exhaust themselves with frantic motion, bleeding out energy and exposing intentions, while you conserve strength, watching, calculating, preparing. Then, at the decisive moment when action can no longer be resisted, you move. And that movement, sharpened by restraint, lands with the force of inevitability. Your strike is unquestioned. Your words fall like verdicts. Your presence cannot be dismissed. Power rooted in nonchalance carries a paradoxical quality. It terrifies and reassures simultaneously. Fear alone can rule, but it breeds rebellion. Love alone can bind, but it breeds dependency. The rare individual who blends both, the calm, unshaken figure who radiates inevitability, transcends either. Others fear crossing him because he cannot be broken, yet they are drawn to him because he does not demand, does not chase, does not cling. He stands apart, and that distance makes him magnetic. Here lies the revelation. Power is not truly about controlling others. It is about reaching a state where no one can control you. Nonchalance, raised to its highest form, makes you untouchable. It turns every attempt at manipulation into wasted effort. It transforms every provocation into silence, every trap into emptiness. This is the final law. The one who cannot be controlled inevitably controls everything around him. Now you see the transformation. From reactionary to sovereign, from prey to predator, from noise to silence. Nonchalance is not passivity, it is power perfected. When you move through the world with stillness, you stop begging for respect and start commanding it. People feel your presence before you speak, and they adjust themselves to you, not the other way around. This is the art of nonchalance, power in stillness. And if you've made it here, it means you're ready to step beyond ordinary psychology and into the domain of timeless strategy. The journey doesn't end here, it begins. So stay with me, because the deeper we go, the more untouchable you'll become. This is curiosity to wisdom, and your transformation has only just started.